and welcome to DM's Book Club, a podcast where we read about some dungeons and discuss how we might put dragons inside our role-playing campaigns, or any other creature. This time, not dragons, vampires. So, sorry, I've just completely ruined Fiona's format.
I love it.
Fiona, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you, Dee, for joining me. And what an entrance! I love it. It's like open the door, fall flat, and back up. I love it.
Yes. Kick the door in. Let's go. It has been snowing today in good old London. Have you been able to get out inside it, around it, all the stuff?
All the stuff? No, it's so funny because obviously I'm sure we've lived in London for approximately the same amount of time, but this is the first time I've actually seen it right outside my door because I live fairly not just off to one side in London, not central London, but there's always that thing like, oh, it's too warm in the city to snow, blah, 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 blah. And then this morning I was making notes for this and I looked up and I was like, holy shit, it's snowing. And I rushed out with a phone. I'm like, look, it's a Christmas, it's a January miracle, all that sort of thing. Oh, but yeah, it was beautiful and like it was proper thick as well for like an hour, and then it stopped and it started melting. So, but it was magical for the brief time it was there. Did you go out in it then?
I did. I got quite sick last year, so I've been going on steadily longer and longer walks. Obviously, not with anyone because the Rona. And today I managed to make it to one of my favourite little bakeries, which is pretty desolate, and pick up the finest colour that London has to offer, which is a wonderful braided bread on which you snack on the way home.
That sounds like a quest in itself, like a proper one-shot where you're at the bakery at the end, the desolate place. So.
Well, you've got good exercise, and then you have baked goods. So what's not to like?
That is a reward in itself. Yes, I agree. Shall I tell you what we're talking about today then, Dee?
Please.
We talked about last time about using like the Quiet Year and microscope games, a way to world build with your players. And I wanted to talk about a game that I'm hoping to run with my players in this year at some point. And my New Year's resolution was to run a proper quotation marks, a campaign fully by the end of this year, because as you know, Dee, I run a lot of one-shots because my brain I can't remember people's names at the best of times. So from one session...
Oh, you're in trouble.
But the other thing is that I, as a teenager, obviously loved gothic horror, loved all that sort of thing, werewolves, vampires, etc. And of course, reading Curse of Strahd, I was like, this is me all over. And right now, in the pandemic, why not do some gothic horror and inflict it on everybody else I know? So today we're going to look at something a little bit different than the Curse of Strahd in general. We're going to look at some articles that got released on DnD Beyond by James Hackey, or Hack, I don't know with the last name, but basically the main writer for DnD Beyond. And he wrote Strahd Must Die Tonight, which is a way to condense the Curse of Strahd into 4 hours or a little bit more.
Which is a miracle, because there's so much of it that trying to get it done in one shot is almost unbelievable.
Exactly that. And it's so cool because then on top of that, in the last 2 years, there's been Strahd Must Die Again and Strahd Must Die in Space. So
For real
this time, we think. We don't know. We'll find out obviously at Halloween this year, I think. But yes, so that's what we're looking at today. We're looking at these 3 articles about the Curse of Strahd and how you can run it within 4 hours.
I should state going in that I have feels, as kids say, about this subject. I have played Curse of Strahd, the full campaign, once most of the way through before a valiant death. I'm on my second playthrough of it now, and I've played Strahd Must Die Tonight twice. There are bits of it that I absolutely adore. I definitely grew up a goth in London, so I'm very much down for the whole high drama, big lace collars and the whole deal. But there are other bits of it that drive me absolutely bonkers. It's a really weird setting because it's this kind of guided narrative sandbox, and it's got so much material, so many names, and a lot of MacGuffins in it. My first question for you is like, how are you going to go about this? There's so much just to pull, what are you going to choose as the material you're going to include? Are you going to include the weird were-ravens? Are you going to include the goat? What are your chosen bits and pieces that you're going to run with?
It's so true. So yeah, it looks very deceptive because you think, oh, it's only 200 pages long as a module book. But it turns out it is a whole land, as in case people aren't aware. So Ravenloft, where it is set, is almost like its own demi-plane where Strahd has taken his influence over it and taken his place away. And those who get in can't get out unless they have his approval, to put it like that. And yet you have sort of a huge, if you look at it comes with a beautiful, beautiful map, and its place is big, really big. So you can imagine if people were running away from something, they could run, but something will eventually catch up to them because it is just grassland and water and stuff like that. And then the three sort of main villages and then other bits and pieces of ruins, they have their own intricate, deep chapters as well. And like 3/4 of the book is that. And then 1/4 of the book is just the castle, which has over like 100 rooms, different things, different traps, which you would spend in a normal campaign I'd say probably double-digit sessions perhaps if you're starting from it to the end of it. So yes, so there's a lot to do it. And for me, and this is the other thing, I've sort of put a timer on it myself. I've told the players that as well as sort of character creation stuff, that we'll play as much as we can, but the session ends at session 20. And so it puts a bit of agency onto the players themselves to find all the stuff. But then I guess maybe at session 15 or 16, they will get that invite from Strahd, because that's, again, spoiler, that's what kind of happens, that Strahd invites them to the castle through whatever means it is. They get to the castle and then they have 5 sessions or whatever to explore the castle.
And presumably if they don't accept, or if they run, or if they're not ready, Strahd will just come for you on session 20, and then if you're not ready, you're done, right? Is that how you go?
That is pretty much how it's going to be, because I think I absolutely love playing in long campaigns. I love having shopping episodes. I love having it. I do, but I think running it, as the DM, I think there's 2 kinds of DM styles. Like, oh, good, they're chatting for a bit. I'll just switch off. What is it that you said? Oh no, you can't do that. Switch off. Fine. And I get very impatient, because especially with a story like Strahd, because I feel like there's something about Gothic horror and the creeping dread and stuff. Because again, if people have read Curse of Strahd or any of those sort of Victoriana horror, it's not about the gore. It's not about anything like that. It is that awful fear and thing, and that's what I want to build into people. And again, we've talked about this before, obviously, as long as they're consenting to do it and they want to be a part of this game. Because some people did ask me, like, why now are you playing this game in lockdown? Because obviously things are bad in the world. I'm like, it is, but I think with this, there's the chance of being in the good fight and you're striving to win. You want to beat the bad. And yes, everything is rubbish right now, but you're all going around a common purpose. And that's what I kind of want us to play off that. So that's one of the reasons I've chosen Strahd. But at the same time, nobody's got time for that. So I'm gonna make them. So I want them to move on, so that if they're like, oh, we need to go back there, I said, well, you can't go back there. Whether that's going to be invisible game wall or the place doesn't exist anymore.
I've had this chat with my current DM with Curse of Strahd, because like I say, I've played it through most of it before, and you can really get lost in it. You can really wander off piste and just wind up 3 sessions in a village and whatever. And Gareth's response to this is, oh, you can't go back there. Why not? It's on fire. The whole place is burnt down. It's crisp now. There's nothing to go back to. End of story. Next thing. But there is a tension here, because Curse of Strahd requires you, if you're going to win, and obviously you want to win, and it's weird in that it's a campaign and that you can win. It's set up about whether you do win or lose, which most aren't to that extent. The tension is you've got to get these MacGuffins, you've got to get these things to actually succeed. I have put my hands on that King Sunblade more times than I care to count, and not once has it gutted into life for me. And I still don't know what the rule is, how it works, what it's for. I've come in as a druid who thinks they're a werewolf and has barbarian levels. I've come in as a rogue. I'm currently coming at it as a full paladin, just in case it's and so I've not read the book in case it's not obvious. And I'm going to put my hands on that blade again, and I guarantee you, for the 4th time, I will have no idea how to make it work.
Yes.
How do you deal with that when you're on a short timeline, whether it's 1 night or 20 sessions? And because mystery is part of the game, but at the same time, you've got to get there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting, so obviously we've not gone on to the article yet, but there's something that says in the article, so context as well. During the beginning of the prep, or at a time which the players find, oh God, I can't believe it, Madam, what's her name?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh no.
I've just had the name of the actual spiritualist she's based on going into my head.
Madam Eva?
Yes.
Well, this is really awkward because we both know basically the fortune teller role, whether it's of the Vistani, they perform a fortune telling thing to tell you where these 3 artifacts of Strahd are, where an ally is, and where Strahd can be found. And you do that in both the main campaign and also in this one shot as well. But what's interesting in the one shot, it says that, so as to explain for the one shot, the reason you can probably do it in 4 hours is because it is just limited to the castle itself. You forget all the bits and pieces around you, and you are just, it is basically you get into the castle, the mists of Ravenloft come up, and you can't get out. You have to solve this puzzle. You have to keep going forward. Now, the cards tell you where where in the land these artifacts are. In the Curse of Strahd one shot, it says if you pull a card and it says it's not in the castle, that artifact is unattainable.
Oh, what?
Straight off.
Okay, that's incredibly difficult.
So, but that's the thing. So it is a rule that you can have. So you could play a full tarot card reading that has that, or you could just use it so it's all the locations in the castle, which I thought was really cool. So again, you could try. I think depending on how if you want people to be like, oh, we want to find it, but you feel like, do you want a challenge? Okay, well, do you want to take this risk? So I think for me, if I was running this particular one shot, this over the full campaign, I would say I'm going to give you a choice right now. Do you want to have the chance of not getting these artifacts? Do you want to make it harder for yourself? But some people might want to actually try, because it does say in the pre sort of amble to the one shot, it said if they do find all 3 items, then technically a group of level 5 characters could easily defeat Strahd with it.
If they can figure out how to sunblade, goddamn right.
Yeah, that is true. to be fair, the sunblade, I always imagine it as just a lightsaber, and it's a
you mentioned the Vistani. Obviously, at the moment, D&D is going through this long overdue moment where it's kind of starting to inspect kind of issues around racism and kind of what that means within the fantasy setting. And the Vistani are part of that conversation, kind of as they should be. What are your feelings about that?
So just again to put it into context, so in the original Curse of Strahd book, so the first edition, the Vistani were painted as lazy evildoers. They were sort of a very big stereotype on gypsies, essentially. Could leave the land and they were in league with Strahd, or at least some of them were. And obviously that's not an okay stereotype as well. I guess the idea, I assume, from the writer's perspective is that, we need to there must be a way into the land, and they're going to have and Strahd's going to have allies that aren't necessarily werewolves or vampire spawn, all that sort of thing. And so I find that's unfortunate. In the new book, what has happened, so the Curse of Strahd revamped, they've taken out 3 problematic lines, and that's about it. So... But I think it's interesting because other people have commented on this saying, well, if you change the role of the Vistani in the story, you change quite a huge core bit of Strahd itself. And I think for me, what I'm planning to do, which maybe isn't the best way of doing this, I will say, I'm not going to use, so there's different ways to get into Ravenloft, and one of it is a Vistani spokesperson comes and brings the characters in. So I'm not going to use that at all. I want to change it so that the Vistani has no alignment at all, that they are doing it to protect themselves, that their ancestors or whoever may have helped Strahd at the beginning, but the current generation of Vistani want nothing to do with it whatsoever, and are actually persecuted by Strahd and terrorized into doing these things for him. Because there are some people who, I think there's that some individuals or some minor characters are evil in the sense of, they're selfish, not evil, sorry, selfish, that they do it for their own intents to get more power over other people.
Individual basis, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not, there's no statement that needs to be made about a whole group of people.
Exactly.
Stereotypes in a particular way.
Exactly.
So you're like, no, like, we're gonna not deal with that problem.
I feel like it's so important because I think what is very clear in Curse of Strahd right at the beginning, because it talks about, there's a whole page about what Strahd is like as a person to play. How do you role play Strahd? And ultimately it boils down to a sentence where that Strahd has no humanity left. They are a monster. And I think that is the crucial point here, that they don't care about anything else. Even the story with Irina and Tatiana, that is something that they've always aimed for, but they've got to this point of their monstrosity, they don't know why they're doing it anymore, which it could paint it in a sad light, but ultimately you cannot empathize with this creature. And I think that's very important to reflect that in the relationship with the Vistani. So yeah, for me, I completely agree with rewriting that role. I think it's hard to take out, I guess, like, oh, well, you can't remove them completely because that would remove a whole plot, and that's not fair. I think I would like to treat it they have no allegiance to Strahd, but they are also persecuted from it, and the players can and should, in my opinion, help them try and break free of Strahd's influence.
Yeah, that sounds like a much more sensible way of handling it. So before going into my current play of Curse of Strahd, I rewatched the Francis Ford Coppola Bram Stoker Dracula. It is a hot mess. It's visually absolutely stunning, and there's lots of it where you're like, what is occurring? But it's really nailed that kind of gothic horror feel. There's something very odd about it, which is not okay. So the Bram Stoker Dracula 1992 movie, I want to say, is that right?
Yes, the one with the long white hair, right? Yeah,
that's the one. Is unabashedly sexy. It's just not like Gary Oldman per se, but the whole film is full on. Meanwhile, a good chunk of like gothic horror literature is kind of under the hood. Like a lot of it is kind of inferred, and things are like beautiful and wilting and like wonderful fashion, but still no. I've seen Strahd portrayed as being an emo edgelord, which is funny if nothing else. I've seen him portrayed as your kind of like ultimate bard, can seduce anything with legs. And I've seen him portrayed as an absolute monster and nothing more than that. It sounds like you're leaning more on the third of those choices. Is that right?
Yes. Spoiler, and I will tell my players not to listen to this. So I saw a picture of a gender revealed Strahd, and that is literally what I'm planning on, because again, it's that sort of thing, like you said, like I think a lot of the times with gothic horror, the sort of female is sort of like is the damsel in distress and stuff like that. I want to change it completely so that most of the gender roles in this are reversed, so it's more of a 50-50 split, and I want to see that with Strahd itself. Mostly I would love to do that, but also I think the players won't expect it. As we've sort of said, people are expecting Strahd to portray as a male presenting individual. So I want to be able to appear for the first couple of times in a session, and then for someone to suddenly click, going, "Oh no, that's Strahd," like literally appear in front of them in some way, or maybe even doing that sort of thing where like a stranger helps you and you don't really know who that person is, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
Exactly. So that's my main thing. And I don't think it's particularly original, but I just want to change, because if you change that big role to be gender flipped, it's like, well, what else changes? And so we'll see. I am aware that it could be like, a quick bury your gay trope with the story of Irene, perhaps, and Tatiana. But again, that's something I'm going to have to work through and write it out a little bit and just flesh it out a bit more so it's a bit more balanced. But I just thought, you know what? I want to see a big bad female lead just once, and means that I get to just be myself.
You just get to like a bit of old pan makeup and just lean into camera. And...
it's like, it is me. Yes.
Hello.
But going back to what you said, the sort of the three different ways, again, I think I will be going for the more monstrous, more cold-hearted thing, just because I don't think, and this is not putting myself down, Dee, I don't think I'm that charming as a bard.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't think I can do that. I love the idea of an emo edgelord for sure, and maybe if I was running the one-shot stuff, maybe I would do it for that. But I think for a sustained long campaign, I think I would just default. And just because I think that's, for me, it's the easiest to maintain and not make it silly. Because I think that the other two, I think I would make it very silly very quickly. And I love being silly, absolutely. But I think just the way I read it, and because I'm so passionate about this sort of thing, I thought, actually, I want to do this justice, and I want my players to. The players can do the comic relief, and then they will regret it instantly. So that's,
immediately punish them for it.
Exactly that.
For the longer format, are there any of the particular settings you're really looking forward to? There's a few bits and pieces that I've been through once. I'm really looking forward to, like the windmill. I'm looking forward to going to the windmill.
Oh yeah, like so again, I've read bits of the windmill soon, and again, I'm not going to do too many spoilers for this in case you haven't read it, because the base of me. But I saw it played out on a stream, the windmill, and again, one of the players in it had DM'd it before, I believe, and now they're playing it, but the DM had changed bits for them. So you saw this player going. Just again, that sort of reacting on screen and stuff like that, and the windmill itself is so horrid and scary again, and you wouldn't expect it. It's a very unusual horror setting as well. To me, when I think of windmills, I think of like Jonathan Creek, that he lived in a windmill. So again, I just love that. I just love that image of it against the dark skies of like Ravenloft, and actually, in a weird way, the other thing I'm looking forward to, which we kind of alluded to a little bit, is like the landscape. Again, traveling to and from Barovia and Kresik and all that sort of thing. Those towns themselves, like Kresik is such a cool little town, the town of festivals, and like all will be well, and you're like, whoa, I love that. Oh, I love it. It feels very much like Hot Fuzz.
Sure, yeah.
That sort of thing to me. There was a description of like it gives a bit of advice about like, how do you interject stuff into this campaign. It's like, yes, it's all grim and dark, but you should see for the light moments. For example, you should describe a beautiful flower that's resting across a gravestone. And I thought, just being able to do that little bit, there's like here are the little bits of colour, subtle dread undertone to it. So I'm looking forward to writing some little bits about that, just like a couple of points, so that when someone goes, I'm going to look out, do I see anything? And I'm like, let me get out my sheet and I'll tell you. But it's not necessarily anything.
A long list of beautiful moments.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think just having that little bits of flavour, just to go, you don't see anything useful, but you saw this, and they go, yay. Oh, gross.
Lots of throwaways of stuff. I think in the adventure that are kind of made to stop you go, there's even when you start in Death House, there's a statue, I think, in the basement. I should know this because I played it very recently, where the statue is holding onto an orb, like a glassy orb. And it's been long enough since I ran it through the first time that I didn't really remember it very well. And you get a bit panicky around it because this big gothic horror thing. So even though, spoilers for the first 5 minutes of the game, even though it's just a regular 25 gold piece arcane focus with nothing special about it, we spent 20 minutes arguing about whether it was a Palantir type of device, and we buried it in the front garden of Death House because we didn't want to take the risk of 25 gold's worth of crystal. No, just bury the whole thing and let it rot.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that kind of feel is where Strahd really comes alive, where you've got this like endless, like you say, this kind of player paranoia.
Yeah, and I'll say, Death House for me. So again, if you're not too sure if Curse of Strahd is for you to read through the Death House, which is just the quick levels 1 to 3, like introduction to Strahd, to Curse of Strahd, where essentially you get to Barovia, so the first village, and then you're sort of put into this position where you can see two children crying and saying, there's a monster in our house. And so instantly you go, oh no, turn around, oh no.
Oh no.
And then the mists of Barovia come in and mists of Ravenloft, come in and push you towards the house. And then you have to go through essentially a haunted house. And yeah, it's such a simple design. That house is like 4 levels and then a basement. And everything about that is like a perfect quick start into not only D&D, but just a quick start into the whole campaign. So I would highly, highly recommend reading it through and then playing it through, even if it's just a one-off, if you're not too sure about doing a massive castle, which let's get on to, because I appreciate we've talked so long about Curse of Strahd. We'll talk about it. So when you're thinking about running Strahd Must Die Tonight, there are some things you need to think of. So as I sort of mentioned, there is this card reading that you do at the beginning, not only in the main campaign, but you should also do it for this one as well, so that you know where these objects, these artifacts can help the players are. And again, as we said, you can either put them in the castle so that they have more chance of getting to it, or that they're outside the castle and they can't be obtained in any way. The other thing it suggests is having pre-gen characters, but possibly more than your players, just in case they do die. And you just have it, so you can just have them ready to go. The real extravagant thing, which I love, which unfortunately wouldn't work currently on the online format per se, is getting a 60-minute hourglass for time. It's a very, it did say it's a luxury item, but it's worth for the performance and just.
It's brutal.
Yes. Well, that's it.
You've got 4 of these, pals. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so that's it. So in 4 hours of real game time, you have to find all these items and face Strahd. And at the end of each hour, Strahd comes and appears to you, mocks you for a bit, unless you have found 1 or 2 of the items, and then starts to attack you. But also, if you're doing it online as well, it does say you could put in an ominous timer. So if you got your Zoom, you could share your screen and see the timer tick down as well.
I think if I were to run it, which I've not done,
no.
I think maybe you can get apps for your phone which do church bells. I think if you hit one of those every hour on the hour, then it would just it wouldn't be a thing you'd be seeing all of the time, but it would remind you that time was passing in a really creepy way. That would work well, I think.
Oh yeah, anything like that. I think for this, like having sound effects, having like again, if we were in person, I probably would have like a little bit low lights, some sort of creepy music, maybe some candles that weren't scented. It's like, ooh, rosemary. But the thing to say though, it is 4 hours of real time, not in-game time. So your players can have long rests. They can. The idea is that when you start it, Strahd, there's a big monologue speech where they say, well, it's going to be, you have 4 hours to Planar Midnight to come and get me. And I was like, oh, what's Planar Midnight? But again, it talks about sort of the other rules as well. So you have to, again, because the idea behind the 4 hour session is because most people probably can't commit to longer than that nowadays. You can do all night sessions if you want. And there are some rules about that. So for every 2 hours, you have lower the level of the characters so that they have more chance to find things or to have a chance to level up, I guess. But yeah, 4 hours plus 30 plus minutes to fight Strahd themselves. So ultimately, I think you're looking at like a 5 hour, maybe even 6 hour, depending on how combat goes. But yeah, I just think it's so with this, because again, if you read the castle chapter, it is so detailed and amazing. It is a haunted house, and there are puzzle rooms, there are like escape rooms, there you meet people that you would recognize if you did the whole journey in town, that you are attacked by vampire spawn, all those sort of things. So you're on edge, but there is the time pressure you need to go find these items. You need to go find your ally to help with Strahd, and just everything about it. I just love this concept of having such a big castle and being able to play it as much as you can. And then as soon as you're done, as soon as you hit that 4 hour mark, it's like, right, let's see if you're ready.
It is a haunted house, but it's a weird example of the format. If you watch haunted house movies, then generally they've only really got 4 or 5 locations. One of my favorite haunted house movies of all time is Event Horizon, which is haunted house in place. And it's got about 5 places in the whole film. And it doesn't really veer outside of that. When you've got this entire castle, it's just, gosh, that's a lot to work with.
And I think it comes to the point where it talks about like this thing. So again, lots of people will probably be like, we want to explore this properly because this is like so bloody cool. And yeah, I guess in the main campaign, you would want to take your time with it. But this is like you need to decide right now and have that action. And speaking of action, at the end of each hour, so Strahd appears, taunts you, but also says, all right, do you want a hint? Do you want a clue? I can give you this hint and this clue.
Well, he makes bargains with you, doesn't he?
Yes, so that's it. So he will give you a hint or a clue or something, as long as you're willing to be bitten by him. And of course, that has implications for the final fight because you are more susceptible to the charm effect and everything like that. And I just love that idea because it's like, I can give you a gift. And these gifts, most of them are very useful. Like you get extra radiant damage against creatures that aren't Strahd. You'll be able to fight, you'll be like, oh, the item is going to be in this place so we can rush there and stuff like that. So there are things to help you, but it is at such a cost. And I love that giving them that sort of that knife's edge choice, and like, well, which one do you want? Do you want to solve this? And I think I can imagine at the end of the first hour, people going, no, wait, we will get you, Strahd. And then about an hour or two, they're like, maybe Tibby, could you go get your? Do
you mind getting a little bit jumped on? I think most of the parties I've played with would never take him up on any of his bargains, but the act of proposing them really helps this atmospheric, like this is a game to this creature. He is the cat. Well, in your version, she is the cat. You are the mice. Like that whole feel is supported by those actions, even if no one ever takes him up on them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is the taunting of the players. And it's like, you'll never do this. Even if you get one of them, you'll still never do it. And just anything like that. But again, I know I love that sort of thing as a player, but I appreciate that, again, that could be like, a power dynamic and people might not be comfortable. So again, as with all these things, and I know we'll keep going back to it, is like make sure people are happy with that, with people being dicks to you in a game. Be okay with that, because ultimately I think, and it's something I always come back to, is that the DM wants you to win. It's just that idea, like I do like having everything going, go on, try it. And see, like, I want them to have that moment where they go, sorry, and if they succeed, I'll be like, you did it, amazing. And because I want them to win, I'm not going to be like, thought so. I'm not. I am honestly not that person. But I want people to take the initiative and take action. I don't do it to like bully them or harass them as players. I just, and that's why I think with this one is that it can so easily turn into where you're playing role playing Strahd is like you just becoming a horrible meanie and be like and hating people because again he is a tyrant. Strahd is a tyrant. So yeah.
There's a thing. I think Brennan Lee Mulligan, who's one of my favorite DMs, says, which is you obviously you are on the side of the players and you do want them to win, but by dint of you being the DM, you've taken this arrogant position of that you know better than they do how that's going to feel best, and you don't want to. If someone comes into your party and says, I want to do all of these things, you don't first half hour give them all of the things because that's not fun. It doesn't work out. It's not enjoyable for anybody. You have to kind of foreshadow them, put difficulties in their path. You have to make it something worth achieving and something that's well thought for. And I feel like the extent to which Strahd is a massive dickhead is just like a version of that. Like you don't want Strahd to be like, come on then, let's have a fight in first half hour and to kill him. That would be the worst. No one would like that. You want him to be awful, to be genuinely worth murdering, and then to fight your way through the castle to get to him. And if you don't amp up the fact that he is the worst, then you don't get the full resolution of the game.
Absolutely. I think, that is so true. I feel like, we've had it in games, so I think, and I don't know how you feel as a player, I thrive off tension and being scared in the game. Even if my face doesn't say it, because we'll have a break and it's like, is everyone okay? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it, but I'm really scared. And I love that, because I love being tested and stuff like that. And I've had so many screenshots of me when I've recorded our games, when I've gone back and I'm just like, head and hands. Like I've done that. I've cried over stupid NPCs' deaths, because obviously they're very important to me, even though we've only met them like 3 sessions ago. We sent them off on a little quest, and I was like, oh, they're probably going to die, aren't they? They're gone now.
You might as well think about them. They're never going back. There's an endemic thing in D&D, which is it's really hard to get your players to run away. And if you want them to run away, you've got to set up really early. You've got to really impress upon them really quickly that they can die. And Strahd being this big, overwhelming, big bad helps you, I think, set that up. Helps you be like, when you step into combat with him, you know the stakes are high, and you're not coming in as murder hobos, you're coming in as like champions, right? I have a beastie in one of my games, which is a kind of goblinoid spriggan, and it starts off as just a little goblin. And if you kill it within round 2 or 3, all you ever have to fight is this little tiny goblin thing, right?
Oh no!
But the problem is, every round it doubles in size. And I don't know how many mathematicians you've got in your audience, but that is not a good equation. That's a really bad equation. You wind up with like titanic monsters very quickly. And what happens is your party engages this beastie while it's a goblin thing, and they're like, oh, this is great, and they kill it, and they're like, that was super fun, and we're all good. And then they meet a second one, and they just rush blithely in. But if they don't quite get it, they're like, wait a minute, this is growing. And then by turn 4 or 5, they're like, it's much bigger than any of us. And by turn 6, like, it's bigger than buildings. And then they will run.
Yes.
They will run so hard. And the thing my party doesn't know yet is they're going to face one of these things, and when they're higher level and when they can handle it, and then 2 of the little ones are going to show up. So they've got choices. They've got to be like, this big guy, do we focus on this one who's the real trouble and ignore these 2, which will then become enormous?
Oh my word.
Or do we crush them and ignore this guy? And I feel like Strahd's ability to just farm out complete bullshit onto the players' brains is like one of those little beasties that just grows in size. Is the more bullshit he spins and the more of an arsehole he is, the more his reputation grows and the bigger he becomes to fight.
Yes, absolutely. And I generally, it's that sort of thing where, and I think this is the thing for me as well, is that Curse of Strahd is great, but if you don't have people who want to play the whole campaign just to play the final fight, then Strahd Must Die Tonight is exactly that. Because I think that it ties up such a cool story, but it is so cool as a separate thing itself. Yeah, I just think everything about it, like the writing of this article is really laid out as well. Like Strahd's enemy is, they say like for ease, just make it Irina, who's a very notable NPC in this as well. Like you can make it as an ally and stuff. And yeah, I just love everything about it. D, what if you're like, I'm done with Gothic horror, but I like Strahd. What do I do?
I'm tired of Earth. I must go to Mars.
I must go to Mars. Well, this is the thing. So the sort of spin-offs you can do as well. So say you've played Strahd must die a few times and like, that's great. We want to play it again. And you're like, oh, but they know all the tips and tricks now. All the players know. There's two other versions you can have. So the other version is like Strahd must die again, which I quite like because it starts with you actually killing Strahd in the chapel. And so it could either be a direct sequel to what you've to the first game. The thing with all the endings to these games, it ends with Strahd dying and you describing the death because you've not done anything outside the castle, so there's no loose ends to tie up. You've done the job, hooray! And you just describe it in awful devil as the sun comes up, all that sort of thing. But Strahd must die tonight. It starts with you killing Strahd, but things are not right. You're like, oh no, it's not Strahd, it's a vampire spawn. And then all these other spawn come out, all these doppelgangers come out, and what has happened in sort of the meantime is that a mind flayer has appeared and as they do, and has infected Strahd with a tadpole to turn Strahd into a mind flayer. And the same thing happens again. You have 4 hours to stop this transformation, to kill Strahd, to stop this influence. And what I love about it is that not only does at the end of each hour, Strahd appears to you, but also their appearance changes. So you're like, oh, you've got tentacles now. Ooh, lovely. Yeah. But there again, that sort of thing where that I can give you a gift, but you must establish a link with me, a mental link, and then you just have Strahd talking to you for hours, just like,
no,
yeah,
don't like it.
Oh yeah, and so you get disadvantage on wisdom saving throws if that happens. But obviously,
that's the word.
Yeah, absolutely. But what is also cool, so the Alhoon mind flayer that has appeared to do this, they are sort of safely away, keeping a track on what you're doing and what Strahd's up to, but you can go kill them. But they have another mind flayer which has turned into a vampiric sort of spawn, a horrible hybrid, which is described as a feral creature. And at the end of the first hour, D, all the lights in the castle go out and this creature starts hunting your players. Yeah. And so you're, again, a race against time, you're like, and you lots of dice rolls, but oh, where is it? And it will be in the ceiling, waiting to drop down
on the walls.
Yeah.
Oh, the walls.
It is proper Alien-esque. And it is, I just like the idea that it's changed it now. So you've gone from the Gothic horror where things are dreadful, where now you have the predator hunting you. And this creature as well, like looking at it, it says, oh, it's got a reputation. You make a history check. Oh yeah, in the last 2 weeks you've heard that all these bodies were found with no heads, and they've called the killer the headhunter. No, you just get that information as it drops from the ceiling and tries to, for a legendary action, extract brain, all that sort of thing. But my favorite bit about this creature is that it has emotion telepathy. So when it's in the other room and within 60 feet, all the players at the back of their head start to feel like feelings of hunger and hatred and sorrow as a way of like, it's behind you, that sort of I love it. I absolutely love this stuff. Oh, it makes me feel amazing as a result. Like, I just love that little bit of description. I say, oh, it's behind this door.
Oh, that little bit of I have a tiny anecdote, which is now, now's a great time to introduce.
Do it.
We're essentially talking about environmental storytelling, right? Like things that are ambience that tell a story that then suck you in.
Mm-hmm.
Now is a great time to mention I've been to Bran Castle in Romania. I've been around the whole thing. It's amazing. But the bit of it that will stay with me, obviously it's an incredible experience and you should absolutely do it when it's safe to do so.
Absolutely.
But the thing that will stay with me forever and ever and ever is there's this quite cramped, the whole thing's quite cramped, but there's this run from one room to another with kind of, your ropes up, and there's the Count's bedroom, which is beautiful, this incredibly huge 4-poster bed, everything's super plush. But even though that's very much the focus of the room, there's a wardrobe, this huge wooden wardrobe just to the left of the door as you come in, and it has all of these like Gothic horror touches and the carving and everything, except it's real, it's the real deal. So you see this thing and you can't help but feel like it's this massive coffin that's just stood up, even though it's a wardrobe. And you get a bit closer and someone on the staff who looks after this whole place has just put a tiny sign on the side of the wardrobe, and you have to get quite close to read it, and it just reads, "Do not knock."
Ooh, yeah. Yes.
Which is the best bit of environmental storytelling I've ever seen in my entire life. And I have no idea if it's just, too many tourists knocked on it and they're worried about structure but still, you look at this thing and you're like, sure, no, I'm not gonna, you know what? I'm fine. I'm not gonna do that. It's fine.
Oh, we've had, when you're in a session where your DM tells you something, you go, right, well, thanks for the lovely meal. We are going to leave right now.
We'll go home. Yeah, you see that little sign, you like lean in, you're like, maybe I should leave now.
Yeah, I should just go. Oh yeah, stuff like that. Little bit of storytelling like that is great. Again, sparked off my own little small anecdote, which we'll quickly do. Again, in the before times, I love, there are ways you can get like audio theatre. So like you download an app and then you listen to it and then you go on a journey throughout London and stuff. So I did one around St. Paul's. There's one in Embankment where you had to book, and it was very weird. Like we were all hanging around outside, obviously with headphones, waiting for the door to open, and then we all shuffle in, and there was like something weird about sci-fi, and then we went back to Roman times. But underneath, they clearly were excavating this like ancient bits of wall from whatever times it was, and it was just again this vast sort of pit with bits of columns and stuff, and we were on like a metal bridge, and you're just hearing it, and again, if you close your eyes, you could probably just work out like bodies or hands coming out of the ground, pulling themselves up. It was vast as well. It was like it must have been about 60 feet, this room, like, and you're just over the top on a bridge. It was great. Again, that sort of idea that like it just that isolation, but the vastness of it is so important to environmental storytelling. But what if, D? What if you don't like this planet anymore? And
just done with it.
So the third and final variation for this, which I think it is pretty cool, but it does say right at the top that this is definitely the wackiest, over-the-top, and mercifully non-canon adaptation of Curse of Strahd.
No My Little Pony crossover?
No, sadly no, but maybe, hey, we don't know. But this basically, in this story, so we've talked about Irene before and Tatiana, so again, in the Curse of Strahd, Strahd's sort of main obsession is with this young Bavarian woman called Irene, who is the spitting image of Strahd's beloved, Tatiana. And so Strahd spends most of this campaign trying to get Irene and turn her into vampire spawn. So yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. I can't wait for this film coming out now. In this scenario, and with all these scenarios actually, it's you suggested that Irene is Strahd's enemy, so she helps you and is quite powerful in the way she's got stats as well. In this one, she's like, I am in great danger. Mordekainen, please take me to your home planet and keep me safe.
Okay.
So Mordekainen hides her away on this planet, and Strahd hates this and spends years trying to find her. And then it turns out his minions find the remains of a spelljammer which has crashed out. Unfortunately, Dee has got their head in their hands. Oh
boy! So
they get the helm of the spelljammer, take it back to Castle Ravenloft.
Oh no!
Plonk it on the top of the castle in the North Tower. Get it to work, and then just like a Rocky Horror Picture Show, the castle goes up into space.
So it's one half Rocky Horror, one half Event Horizon. That's
1,000%.
Bonkers.
And you just make it in time to get to this castle as it's going through the space. And you have 4 in-game hours, but 4 leagues or whatever before the castle goes to Mordekainen's home planet. And you have the same sort of things, like it's you have, what's great about this one is that you roll for encounters that other things crash into the castle, because obviously it is going at vast speeds through the void. So you have stuff like a GIF ship crashes into the courtyard, and so giant space hippos come and start killing all the random shit that's happening in the castle, and they will happily pledge their lives to you because they're here to get rid of evildoers because they crash their ship.
Yeah.
And the other thing, what is cool about this, so you're like, what happens to Irina? Like, has she been taken out of the plot? Oh, no. She's learned how to do astral protection. So she's also there for a bit. But what's cool about that is that if she fights something and then is reduced to 0 hit points, she is gone. So it makes the fight even harder once she's disappeared as well. So again, just little things of this, but I just love the idea to go, you know what this place needs?
Space
and hippos and spelljammers.
When you said GIF, I was like, Give? No, get like the hippos. The hippos. Yes, the hippos.
We're talking about the hippos. Yes. So yeah, it's again, it's that sort of thing where you're like, we're going to go even sillier now. And I feel like it's like any horror film. You have the first really serious one, and then you get the second one. It's like, oh, we're trying to find ourselves a little bit, and then it's like, sod it. Let's full Ragnarok this. Done.
The shark has been jumped.
But again, something so completely different, another way to just run your campaigns. And, again, it's that sort of thing where you're like, is everyone on the same page about this? Great. We're going to have a good fun. I can imagine the players having a lot more fun with this, but I would love to do like the lead up to it doing all three from start to finish, because otherwise I think doing it on its own in isolation, people might not get it as much. But and my taste.
The thing I definitely wouldn't recommend would be like running the entire campaign and then at session 15 the castle takes off. I think that would not.
That was my other secret. No, agreed. I think it's quite funny because it does talk about like because people will remember like, oh, is that a Spelljammer ship? And it does give it like checks for it. So it's like, oh, it's a DC 15 Arcana check to recognize that you're in realm space, but then it's a DC 28 Arcana check to be like, oh, this is a Spelljammer. Like, it's that high, which makes sense, I guess. But I just love it because you're like, because obviously the player will know, but you're like, you'll never find out. No, you will never know what this is. So
it's just bananas. It's just straight up bananas. That's all it is.
But that's the thing. So you can that's what's cool about this. It's like, and you can do this with obviously any module. It's like, in fact, you can take one vital part of it, run it for 4 hours, and just put your own spin on it. Whether it is the wacky sci-fi one or going really deep into that sort of the horror monster hunting one as well.
You can take any one element of the place you really like and then put an engine in it and put it into space.
Yeah, put it in space. Add some hippos, some guns. Jobs are good.
Fun times for everyone. Yeah, jobs are good. I think we're pretty much at time.
Yes, I think we did.
on that bombshell. So, yeah, tell us where we can find you on the internet and pitch us anything you have to pitch.
Well, okay. So I am the host of What Am I Rolling, a twice-monthly RPG one-shot podcast. As always, it's going very, very well. I'm sure I'm doing lots and lots of fun things in the future. Thanks, past Fiona, for doing that. No problem, present Fiona. It's all good. Future Fiona, I hope that went well. So that's all good. I've been doing a lot more improv, actually, thinking about it. I've somehow landed a really cool part in a team called Dope Mess, which is an all-female, non-binary improviser group.
Nice.
And the concept behind the form is that we're all on Zoom for something, which I appreciate. A lot of improv is all on Zoom, but it's like the suggestion is like, why are we having a call? So we've had one about where we're all mafia people having a reunion. That was pretty fun.
Okay.
And then the one we did last night, which actually was really good, was just about book club. And so the idea of the format is that we all had the big meeting at the beginning where we're like, oh, I'm sorry I'm late, all that sort of thing. And then we go into breakout rooms and then come back and stuff like that. And what was really fun about last night is that we just got book club as our one. So obviously we're all there with the biggest books we could find, like, oh, I've got this. And then somebody brought Twilight out.
Oh.
And obviously we're all there. And I love it because obviously it's my friend Carla, who's just absolutely great at being very emotional characters and reading stuff out. And I'd sort of built it that in a previous scene that I'd hated Twilight. And I was just there for a moment going, what can I do? What can I do? To do something with the scene. And I just went, Stephanie Meyer stole all my ideas.
Oh.
And it just flipped 180, and we had a really lovely slow burn emotional scene about where this all came from and stuff like that. And at the end, one of the other characters it's a long story, and it's very boring when you explain it out loud, but it was so much fun. Like at the end, we all had a group call afterwards, like all on Facebook Messenger, and we were like, that was so much fun. It wasn't comedic at all, but we all bloody loved it. And I was like, yay. Hating Stephanie Myers, okay. So that I do lots of improv, and I obviously run this, and I run What Am I Rolling? But D, what are you up to? What strange and new exciting projects have you got on the horizon?
Well, you know one of them very well because it's the whole Pantheon game stuff that we talked about in the previous session. Very much looking forward to that. It is an exquisite corpse where 4 DMs who I rate very highly and myself get together to create a long-form campaign. We've created all of the back matter through kind of collaborative storytelling stuff, through Microscope, through just really interesting writing exercises. So everyone has parts of the story that are theirs, but it doesn't matter. It all goes into the blender at the beginning of play, and then you can pick up and run with anything you like. So it's going to be an incredible exercise to see how we take each other's ideas, ruin them terribly, make them funny when they weren't intending to be funny, and then use them to beat each other around the head with over the course of 20 levels on a compressed timeline. So if you, like me, have ever wondered how the hell you get from level 1 to 20, hopefully Pantheon will show you how. So that's thing number one. Yeah. Thing number two is the side hustle. Everyone's got to have a side hustle.
I have a side hustle.
Which is on Patreon. It's the World Shapers Atlas. And what it is, I mean, let's be real, under the hood, it's a small part of my occult library used to flesh out a campaign world. But in actually more useful terms, it's how do we take a simple original myth, break it down into elements, and then populate everything in a world so it feels like a cohesive, really entrancing situation to put players into. How do we build stories out of that? And how can you follow that method to profit and gain and watching your players cry, which is what we're all here for.
That's all we're here for.
That's what we're here for.
Fantastic. Oh, wow. I feel so pumped now that I just want to go run all the Curse of Strahd right now.
Can punch Strahd in the teeth.
Yeah. Oh no, why? Yeah. And the
how does the sword work?
Oh god, who knows? But I was gonna say I've been doing lots of research for it, but embroiling myself into it. But I've been watching a lot of What We Do in the Shadows. So I'm totally going to bring some Vampire Spawn that are just that sort of genre, that sort of comedic stuff at some point. But it'll be so subtle because I can't do New Zealand accents for love nor money. And I don't think I would like to try, but I want to have that sort of, maybe just do the Matt Berry one and just have that in, oh yes, see, my garden of vulvas. Just like...
I want to be a fly on that particular wall. That sounds incredible. All right. I think that's us.
That is us. Well, thank you so much for listening, everyone. And we will see, talk, speak. We'll do stuff with you next time. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.